Hello and welcome everybody to the Yang and Tang Show, aka the SportsCast. I'm your host here, Jerry Yang. Mike Tang is still on assignment. He'll be back hopefully next week. I'll have to reach out and see if you can join us. But today you get me again. So let's see. Let's jump into the biggest news of the week. I think everyone's been following the Warriors playoff run against the Grizzlies. Game 4, game 5, pretty crazy coming up with game 5. So let's recap a little bit of game 4. I think the biggest thing I saw was Curry and Clay and Jordan Poole and the rest of the team was having a 3-point shooting slump. I think there wasn't any 3-pointers that went in until late in the second quarter when Otto Porter actually was the one that got the first 3-point bucket. And I think overall, I'm not sure what's going on with Clay Thompson, but he seems to be struggling a lot on the line. I'm seeing him trying to pull up some jumpers as well instead of trying to get some 3 pointers to help his shooting percentages, but seeing a lot of clanks. Kind of interesting because when you look at Twitter and look at different um, sources on the Warriors website, etc., you're seeing him in practice. He's knocking down shots. He's making them with ease and looks really comfortable from the 3-point line, for the 2-point line, or everywhere else. But then during game time, I'm not sure if the Grizzlies found a way to clamp down on him or, the injury is bothering him maybe during game time. But he seems to be in a shooting slump ever since I think there was a report after game 2 where he had some knee soreness. He hasn't really been the same player, and we almost lost game 2 or sorry, we almost lost game 1 because he missed those free throws right in the beginning at the end of the game. So we'll see. Have to keep our eye out for Clay and Curry. Hopefully they can pick up their basket percentages. And I think one of the biggest news for this game was really Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr not coaching because of COVID. It really highlights the importance of Steve Kerr to the team overall. I think we underappreciate or underestimate how important it is to have a good head coach for the Warriors. I think Mike Brown, crazy day for him. He was announced as the Kings head coach. Then later that afternoon, he found out he had to be coaching the Warriors in the playoff game. So that's pretty nuts. Heard he was still arriving to the arena when he found out. So I think he wasn't really prepared. But he's actually 12-0 as head coach. He had to fill in for Steve Kerr last year when Steve Kerr had, I think, the back surgery and things like that. I know Luke Walton filled in for him before pretty well. And, after that announcement, people are saying Mike Brown has a 1-0 record, right, as the Kings head coach. And there was actually a really funny quote from Steph Curry after the game saying, felt like we got traded to the Kings, and I think the Kings fans really wish that happened. But for us, no, don't really want that. We'd rather have Curry. So yeah, so that was huge news, and it seems like Mike Brown's going to be coaching again in Game 5 on the road tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes, but if he's, I think the biggest thing with Mike Brown to me is that he's not able to make adjustments, right? Like halftime adjustments, and he never had to with Cavaliers. I think having LeBron there kind of solved a lot of problems. But overall, seems like he's just trying to let the team go or do its thing, right? Like you saw him mic'd up during the game. He talked about pacing. He told his players that starting the game, they were going too fast of a pace. They had to kind of slow it down. And then after the second quarter and halftime when they interview him, he said he told the players to slow it down and find that balance. But he's not really, talking about what specifically they need to do to speed it up. Maybe he's doing it in the huddle and not telling the newscasters and all that stuff, which I understand. But I'm definitely noticing adjustments not being made for guys like Clay. We talked about having a shooting slump. I don't think he's giving a lot of constructive feedback to him to make some adjustments, or at least adjustments aren't working because Clay's still having the slump despite all that, right? So we'll have to see. Keep our eye on it. And we have a comment from What's Up G. Says breaking news: John Morant out rest of the postseason with bone bruise. Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit. That was a little bit interesting. I think not having John Morant there really changed the way the Grizzlies played. I saw a more often defensive heavy team. I think that's why the scores were pretty low scoring. I expect the rest of the series either game 5 and game 6. My prediction is Warriors in 6, so I'm guessing it's going to go to game 6. But it seems like the game really slowed down, and the team really played a lot more aggressive. Right on the Grizzlies played a lot more aggressive against the Warriors without Ja there. And I think it was kind of interesting leading up to game 4, where first in game 2, GP2 had an elbow fracture in the first quarter. He's out for the playoffs unless they get to the finals. It seems like that's also kind of iffy as well. And then there's a lot of talks about breaking the code or broke the code, right? I think there's a unspoken code there where you don't injure another player just to get an advantage in the series. I think Brooks from the Grizzlies, a lot of people felt like he did that when he had that hard foul on GP2. And then in game 4, John Morant hurts his knee. A lot of people are saying broke the code because they're blaming on Jordan Poole for yanking on his knee. But you know what? That play, I think it was going for the ball. To me, I'm seeing a play where John Morant jumps up to try to block a shot or disrupt the shot and landed a little awkwardly. In my opinion, that started the knee injury. And I think the actual play where everyone's referring to with Poole, I think it was already hurt at that point. And so to me, I don't think he broke the code. I thought the Grizzlies were a bit immature. Both players and coaching staff are saying that it was Jordan Poole's fault. Not very professional in my opinion, and there's a lot of karma I think that's coming back as well. So we'll have to monitor how the Grizzlies play going or for the rest of the series. But Warriors are doing well. They're the only team in the playoffs that's not 2-2 now, right? 3-1. I felt like the Warriors, after if we can get past the Grizzlies, are going to be very battle tested. They would have taken down a very young team, a more physical, more aggressive team in a lot of ways. And this is a team that beat the Warriors throughout the season, right? I think that every time we played them, we've lost, and that's mainly because we weren't at full strength, but still having some a little bit ownage, as they would say in sports. And so yeah, so I think the Warriors have a big hill to climb, but we have one more game to go. Hopefully, we can close it out either on in game 5 or in game 6. But I'm looking forward for the Warriors to move on. And so, what's up? G says Morant was having knee problems throughout the regular season. Yeah, he was. So it probably got exaggerated or exaggerated as the series went on, right? And I think that's one big knock on John Moran is his injury and not being as physical in some ways. But he's still a really good player. So I think Grizzlies definitely lost someone big. To me, that's like a kind of a series changing um, injury, right? So but they played hard. I think the last game they almost won, and they should have won probably in game 4. The Warriors just stuck to the plan towards the end. They were definitely the more experienced team that beat a younger team, I thought. But as the Vin Diesel quote goes, right, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or win by a mile. Winning's winning. So I think the Warriors definitely won out there. And in other news around the league for the NBA, Nikola Jokic did win MVP for the second straight seasons in a row. Congrats to him. Um, I feel like eventually they need to give Curry another nod because I thought Curry played really well this season, and maybe it's because he had the injury towards the end of the season that they didn't give him the MVP. but definitely deserving. Hopefully, he gets like a Finals MVP because I think one of the biggest knocks on Curry is that he doesn't show up for the playoffs, right? And he doesn't get, especially during the finals, where he kind of gets double team or triple team, and his stats don't look as well. So then the MVP, accolades kind of go to other members of the team. So hopefully we can see that change for this year. Definitely hoping for a championship for the Warriors, but that's something I think on Curry's legacy and on his career resume that he hasn't seen that Finals MVP. So I think to me that is more important than having the Series MVP, and Curry has won it twice already as a league MVP. So that Finals MVP I think will mean a lot if you can win it. So all right, so moving on to NFL 49ers news. Not much this week. I think a pretty slow week overall. Jimmy G still on the roster. Yes, I know. Debo still on the roster. Biggest news from Debo is the fact that he's following the Niners again on Instagram. I think a lot of people read pretty deeply into these things where they think, just because he follows back on social media that he's going to resign. I don't think that's the case. I think it's definitely a good sign he's doing it, but it's not a lock by any means, right? So I think people shouldn't get their hopes up too much. I'm thinking a deal will get worked out, but following social media doesn't really mean anything, in my opinion, right? And then the second biggest news is Niners will play in Mexico City on November 21st against the Cardinals. Fortunately, it is going to be the Cardinals' home game, not the Niners' home game. We've played a few international games in the past and lost home games. I think that's my biggest issue with playing internationally is you kind of do lose a home game, even though you're because they're home. The fans aren't necessarily all your fans there, right? But kind of cool. Mexico City Estadio Azteca. I think it's the first time the NFL, or maybe the second time the NFL has played in Mexico City. First time for the Niners for sure. So be on the lookout for that. Might be a cool trip to go to Mexico, not too far away, and all that stuff. So definitely loving that part of it. So that's I think the biggest news there. And anything else you guys have? So please drop a comment. I think Niners news pretty slow until training camp starts, and that's when I expect more movement to happen. It's going to be in a couple weeks. I think right before training camp starts in June. That's when we're going to see probably Jimmy G's injury, surgery, recovery finishes. We'll see him probably throwing on the field and all that stuff. And then we're also going to be able to see if there's any movement with Debo, right? So that's going to be something to look out for sure. And then we'll go from there. All right, let's move on to Giants baseball now. The Giants have won 8-5 in the last game against the Colorado Rockies. That makes it 3 in a row. One notable standout is Marcurio Dubon. He's 6 for 12 with 6 runs and 5 RBIs and 2 homers in these 3 games. Guys, absolutely crushing it, right? So hats off to him. That's our, I think, MVP for the last 3 wins. And Carlos Rodon still striking out a lot of people, So he's been a great pickup. He's been established as a solid 1 or 2 next to Logan Webb. I think that was a really good pickup by the Giants there. I think if anyone had any doubts about him, I think are kind of rescinded now, right? I think Carlos Rodon looking great. I think these next 2 games with the Rockies is going to be outstanding for the Giants, mainly because we've had kind of a tough stretch, but now we get to play the Rockies at home. Definitely, the Giants are a better team, in my opinion, compared to the Rockies. So I'm expecting a few more W's coming our way here, especially if the bats can light up, right? So that's gonna be awesome. I think one thing to know is Sunday was Buster Posey Day. Pretty interesting. They retired Buster Posey's number at the stadium. Brian Wilson was there. Matt Cain was there. Bruce Bochy was there. It was kind of interesting to see Brian Wilson. He had a long hair, looking really fit. A lot of people actually thought that was Lincecum. Lincecum did not show up, which is kind of interesting. But Yeah, Brian Wilson was looking pretty good in terms of his physical shape and the long hair, no beard anymore. But yeah, I think it was kind of nice for the Giants to really honor him, hoping that one day Buster Posey will be a Hall of Famer. I'm feeling like that he's going to get the nod, maybe not first ballot, but we'll see. We'll see how things go there. So um, yeah, so I think overall looking better for the Giants. One thing that we would have to look out for is how the schedule continues and how many guys we get back, right? I think the biggest thing was a lot of players were came down with COVID. Mike Strusinski and Brandon Bell, I think, had some injuries there. Jock Peterson, but a lot of those guys are back. I know Bell is still a little bit dinged up. He's day to day, but we'll have to see. One guy I really wanted to see come back is Evan Longoria. Seems like his rehab assignment's over. Physically, he's looking good. Hopes to rejoin the Giants, but a lot of reports are saying he's having trouble focusing in Triple A. And he's a guy that we tied up a lot of money to. So whether he feels like it or not, he's a guy that needs to step it up. And it's a contract year for him. Maybe it's his last contract. So that's why he's feeling like he's in retirement mode early. But we definitely need him at third base to be the Evan Longoria. And he's been kind of a bust for the Giants since we picked him up, right? So that's one thing that I'm pretty disappointed by him. Like a lot of other players that we get, like hasn't panned out. One guy that I really think about is Barry Zito, right back in the old days, where he hasn't panned out, but then you see him grinding, you see him trying. He's not milking it in, and then eventually he had a great playoff series, and all is forgiven. I think he was looking a lot better, right? So that's where I felt like someone like Evan Longoria needs to be, rather than being where he is, where we're missing a lot of games here. But kind of disappointing. We'll see how it goes as time goes on here, but hoping to see him back in the lineup eventually. All right, so one last thing, we're gonna move on. Usually we don't cover the NHL, but today kind of a special case. We'll cover the San Jose Sharks. One of the longtime captains of the San Jose Sharks, Patrick Marleau, announced his retirement. Like I think he's been one of the Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame type players. For all I've known him, he's always been the captain. I know he's left the Sharks a couple years back, then came back. Just want to give him a shout out for the retirement for all the years that he put in. I mean, him and Joe Thornton, Big Joe as they call him, were some of the longtime Sharks, and the most notable for me as I was growing up watching the Sharks. Those are the two names that really stuck with me, right? That I've always been following, wanting a chance Stanley Cup for them, mainly because they put in so many games in there. And what's up, G says is Jumbo Joe Thornton. Yeah, Big Joe, right? Jumbo Joe. So I think they gave him the Jumbo Joe Thornton title when Joe Pavelski was on our team because they have Little Joe and Jumbo Joe. Pavelski is another guy. I know he left the team as well, but I've always been a fan of Pavelski as well. I think these are some of the guys that been with the Sharks a long time. Fortunately, we've never, or unfortunately, we've never won the championship. I think that's always going to be the thing hanging over the Sharks' head, right? If they can ever win a Stanley Cup, I think it'll generate a lot more interest for hockey in the Bay Area. So hopefully, I think there's a lot of management changes that are coming for the Sharks. I know they replaced the head coach, replaced the president as well recently. So hopefully, with those changes, there's going to be a lot more. And then let's see. What's up, G says Joe Thornton was the number one overall pick, and Marlon was the number two overall pick in the same draft. Yeah, so that's amazing, right? So two guys that are picked one and two, had careers pretty closely together. I think what's interesting about a hockey draft is the fact the way they structure the contracts. I think for rookie drafts, it's always like 100K for the first few years, and then eventually you get the bigger contract and a lot of stuff. I think it's kind of interesting approach. I think mainly because talent doesn't always pan out with hockey players, so they restructure that set. So it's definitely different than what you see in the NFL or MLB even, where you kind of see big contracts right off the gate, or NBA, right? You always see big contracts since day one, and the team is pretty much stuck with that player if they don't pan out. So interesting approach. Hockey tends to get things right when it comes to those things. So I think that rookie thing is definitely a thing that I felt like was only fair for mainly because of the volume of players they get, right? So all right, so let's move on to the picks of the week. Drum rolls. All right, so first game of the picking game five, Warriors minus 3.5 versus the Grizzlies. They will be in Memphis. Over under is 220.5. So for this game, I'm actually kind of surprised that the Warriors are favored. Mainly because it's a road game, maybe because John Morant wasn't there, isn't playing, right? So that's probably why they're saying they're giving the Warriors a nod. But the Warriors almost lost last game, and they were at home, and we still aren't getting Steve Kerr back. To me, it seems obvious to me to kind of pick the Grizzlies with the points here. Not saying the Warriors are going to lose, but yeah, it just seems to me that the Grizzlies will keep it close, like how they did in this last game, and then maybe edge out the Warriors here. So I'm going to go with the Grizzlies plus 3.5. Um, maybe even take them for 4 points. I think that's going to be that type of game where it's going to come down to the last bucket. Fouling game starts, and then that's all she wrote, right? So it could go either way. So I think the Warriors could close out here. Hopefully they do get that rest in, give guys like Clay and Curry, some more resting time, and yeah, and then we'll be ready for the next series hopefully. Over under, I think the 220.5, pretty down the middle, a little bit on the high side. This last game was really, really under. It's a little surprise that it's so high. I would think after the last game, it becomes like a 210, maybe 207 or 208 type of line. But they went with the 220. Maybe it'll move even more as time goes on. But I think I would take the under, especially since I think the Grizzlies will probably pull this one out. And if it's gonna be over, it's gonna be the Warriors type of game, and the Warriors will probably win. So if I'm picking the Grizzlies, then I'm gonna go with the under here. Scrappy game is gonna dictate low scoring here. So I think the Grizzlies under is gonna be what I'm gonna take here. Okay, so the rest of the next pick is the rest of the series against the Rockies. The Giants are at home. So the pitchers for this game is going to be Antonio Senzatela. He's 2-1, 3.75 ERA with 7 strikeouts against Alex Wood, 2-2, 4.38 ERA, but has 26 strikeouts. And then the last game or the rubber game of the series is going to be Chad Cole. He's 3-0, 1.82 ERA, 22 strikeouts against Alex Cobb, who's 1-1 with a 4.8 ERA and 22 strikeouts. So interesting. So I think based on stats alone, I think the first game, Alex Wood is going to pull it out. He's been looking up and down. I mean, by the ERA, he's 2-2, very split there. Um, so I think, but he still pulls out. I think because I think Antonio Senzatela is not gonna outpitch him. He's a type of guy I think the Giants will be up and down with since he's a right-handed pitcher. But I think the Giants still has a chance to pull that one out, right? So I think there's a good win there. Next game against Chad Call and Alex Cobb is going to be tough, mainly because I think Chad Call is looking pretty good. The 3-0 record with the ERAs, speaking volumes. Also a right-handed pitcher. So I think it will be a split at most or at worst, right? So 1-1. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants pull it out, right? Mainly because the Giants have been hitting really well. Alex Cobb looked a little shaky when he first came back, but then the last game he looked really, really solid there. So I'm thinking, it could go either way. But conservatively, I'm going to say it's going to be 1-1 with the Giants winning the first game against Wood, and then potentially losing the second game against Cobb. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if we go 2-0. I think the Giants are definitely the better team compared to the Rockies. We just have more talent there, and we're at home. So, with the bats keep lighting up, then I think we're gonna be a fun ride. So I think overall the Giants are looking pretty solid. It was getting kind of scary with that little slump there, especially after losing to the Dodgers. But getting some of the players back, I think, helped a lot. So I think that helps. All right, so I think that's it for picks. Overall, Niners is kind of the off season really starts for me. I feel like because after the draft happens, there's not really a lot of news until training camp. So I'll expect a lot of movements. Kind of excited to see how the rookies will do, the running back especially, and Danny Gray, the wide receivers, see how they play with them, and also to see if Alex Mack will come back. Right, Alex Mack, the center, is going to be a big piece. We still don't have a full conclusion if he's coming back or not. There's a lot of talks about Aaron Banks possibly playing the center position if he can't. I think that will be interesting to see. And Brunskill as well. I think Brunskill's played center in college, so I think either Aaron Banks or Brunskill, Daniel Brunskill will take over for Alex Mack at center if he were to retire. So hopefully he comes back for one more year. I think he had his last year of his contract anyways. So either way, the Niners have to pick up somebody to move on. But or moving forward rather than to pick somebody. So, and then the Warriors, definitely the topic of the week. Like with the playoffs, everything else, and the Warriors will. They're looking a lot better. Then they kind of slump a little bit. This team is really inconsistent, but this series is tough, right? The younger players, the more physical aspect of this game, and all the games that they played against the Grizzlies, I think will only pay off in dividends, right? When they play teams like the Suns who are more finesse like, the Mavs as well, more finesse, and then the Celtics. So I think this is going to be probably the most physical team they're going to be playing, and probably one of the youngest that can run with them. So. So yeah, getting through this hurdle won't be easy. Even though it's 3-1, we just have to win one more. But as everyone knows from the Warriors, it's not going to be a guarantee, right? We've seen that in the past, but knock on wood, hoping they will win there. Giants continue to roll as well, so they've exceeded the expectations in my opinion. I think starting the season because they didn't make many moves, I just felt kind of disappointed, especially during that slump. But look at their record; they're actually quite impressive. So I think Farhan knows what he's doing, knows how to manage a roster, and that can only benefit the Giants in the long run. And he's been a great, I think, front office person, making a lot of smart moves, finding gems with a lot of the younger guys and newer players that we get. So I think he's definitely a keeper. I mean, a guy like Rodon, like who would have thought, right? I think he was considered like the best free agent pitcher, but no one knew he was gonna be lights out like this. So he's definitely, I think, making a hard push and a hard case to be Cy Young this year potentially, right? Still early, but looking at the way he's playing, wouldn't be surprised at the end of the season. So all right, I think that's about does it for this week. So thanks a lot. What's up, G, for the comments as always. Definitely adds a lot to our show. So yeah, we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube and Facebook for now. I've also tweeted out on Twitter. So please share with your friends. If possible, sign up on and subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to grow our YouTube channel a lot more. Our podcast is rolling still on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I know a lot of folks like listening to the audio more so than watching video or the live stream. So shout out to those folks. Leave us a comment, send us a tweet. So next week we'll probably get Mike back, hopefully. And then yeah, I think there's a lot of catching up to do with Mike. I know he's been keeping up with Bay Area sports, so look forward to having him back here. So all right, so I think that does it for today. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have a good one.